Before we get started, there will be spoilers for the 1000-Year Blood War arc of Bleach and the light novel Can't Fear Your Own World in the video to come. The end of the 1000-Year Blood War arc left us with a lot of questions, including leaving the fates of several fan-favourite characters up in the air completely. To this day, I wish Kubo had included even just a couple of pages in the epilogue to address everyone's whereabouts, but it wasn't meant to be. Unfortunately, the Arrancar, once an incredibly beloved faction of characters in Bleach, were big casualties of the overall rushed ending of the story, completely disappearing altogether in the wake of the battle. While Harribel, the former third Espada turned Queen of Hueco Mundo, definitely has it the worst in the 1000-Year Blood War arc from pretty much day one, the fates of other Arrancar like Nel are left unresolved too. Nel is last seen in chapter 666 blasting towards Askin's Gift Ball Deluxe, which has spiraled out of control after the Sternritter's death. Although she wanted to meet up with Ichigo, Nel's instead been tasked with rescuing those still trapped inside the poisoned arena, and yet we never see her again. Did Nel succeed in saving Urahara from a grisly death? Was she able to extract Yoruichi Yushiro and her fellow Espada Grimmjow at the last second? Unfortunately, the source material simply didn't say, in what I felt was probably the most glaring omission from the epilogue, and so we simply got by on mere assumption. That is, at least until the light novel Can't Fear Your Own World, the opening of which acts as a direct continuation of the 1000-Year Blood War arc, detailing the immediate aftermath of the war, which was so necessary and yet which was unfortunately skipped over in the source material. While chapters 685 and 686 taking the story of Bleach into the far future was undeniably exciting, it meant that unlike the epilogue of the Arrancar arc, we didn't get the chance to decompress in real time with the characters once the war was finally over, after almost 20 volumes worth of fighting came to a close. It's jarring in that way for sure, and I'm hoping the anime fleshes out this time period a lot, even if it doesn't adapt the light novels themselves. So, while we don't know what happened to the remaining surviving Espada, Harribel and Nelliel, in the source material itself, thankfully Can't Fear Your Own World not only reveals their ultimate fate, including what became of Harribel after her time as the Vandenrijk's prisoner, but includes them in a big way in future events to come. So, let's take a look. Before we tackle that though, where did we leave Harribel and Nelliel in the 1000-Year Blood War? Well, Harribel is last seen about 5 chapters into the final arc itself, where Yuha Bark reveals that he's managed to capture her as part of his conquest of Hueco Mundo. A savagely beaten Harribel, still in her resurrection, is chained up somewhere deep within the darkness of Silburn, and that's sadly the last we ever see of her. You'd think that rescuing Harribel would have been the perfect inroad for an Arrancar-led subplot, but it never comes to fruition. Luckily, Nelliel does fare a little better overall. After a few sporadic appearances early on in the arc as the child version of Nel, she later appears as her adult self towards the end of the story, where she joins Ichigo and the others as they ascend to the floating fortress of Varvelt for the very final showdown. Once there, Nelliel and the others give chase as Grimmjow leads the assault against Askin. As they quickly realise they've lost both Grimmjow and Askin, the rest of the team splits up, leading Nel to somehow end up on her own, very far away from any action whatsoever. While Ichigo manages to eventually run back into Askin after the Sternritter dispatches with the Espada, and then somehow meets up with both Chad and Orihime in order to continue their climb, Nel isn't seen again at all until the fight with Askin is essentially over, long after new arrivals Yoruichi, Yushiro and Kisuke have taken control. As Kisuke enlists the help of Grimmjow to finish the Schutzstaffel member off, Askin reveals his death dealing will go haywire upon his death. And while he would have liked to have spared them all out of respect, there's nothing he can do now that his power has been truly unleashed. With the poison barrier now warping and fluctuating wildly around them, both Kisuke and Grimmjow sink to their knees, spewing blood from their mouths as the situation looks truly dire. Despite that, Askin speculates Kisuke has prepared for even this as well. And he's right. Standing some way outside the barrier, we see Nel observing the end of the fight, and she deduces that this was one of the 5 outcomes that Kisuke actually planned for. This is a bit of a weird one when you think about it. It's probably best not to think about it any deeper than simply knowing that Kisuke prepares for literally every single outcome no matter what, but Kisuke had no way of knowing what Askin's power was before arriving at the fight, so the likeliest answer as to how he could prepare for such an eventuality, outside of picking 1,000 outcomes and planning for them all, is that when he briefed, presumably the rest of the gang at his Hueco Mundo base at the time, he speculated that an enemy might try and take everyone down with a last-ditch effort attack. Then, in Varvelt, Nel likely caught sight of the Gift Ball Deluxe and realised that not only was Kisuke inside it, but that he had been right as well. However it works, the plan was clearly set up in some way beforehand, as Kisuke has opened a tiny hole in the side of the Gift Ball Deluxe with his bankai for Nel to get in and out with. Considering they didn't even travel to Varvelt together, he's clearly putting a lot of faith in her. This must have been in the workings for quite some time, though I'm not sure why Nel would necessarily be so beholden to Kisuke outside of the fact that he gave her the invention that allows her to remain in her adult form, I guess. But as she blasts towards the gift ball in an effort to save them all, it seems like she's coming through for them. Regardless, we'll have to wait until Can't For Your Own World to learn if she was successful or not. So let's take a look at what's in store for both Harribel and Nelliel in the light novels. The opening to Can't For Your Own World acts both as a prologue to the light novel trilogy and a much-needed additional epilogue to the 1,000-Year Blood War arc, one that helps bridge the gap between the end of the war and the start of this new story. Thanks to the light novel, we're given a few answers right away to lingering questions from the immediate aftermath of the war itself, something that was sorely lacking in the source material. To be totally honest, even if the anime doesn't get around to adapting the light novels in their entirety, I would really love for them to just at least give us the prologue. Give us that immediate aftermath that we missed out on. But as Kyoraku and Ichibei discuss Yhwach's new fate, several powerful Arrancar appear on the scene, finding their way into what remains of the throne room. As the dust clears, it's revealed that Nel was indeed successful in rescuing Grimmjow from Askin's Gift Ball Deluxe, and there's even more to their story than that. While it sadly occurs totally off-screen, we discover that Nel and Grimmjow broke into Yhwach's dungeon, which had also been transported into the sky with the rest of Silburn, and freed Harribel from her confinement. This is again something I would love to see them add into the anime, though I'm not entirely sure where. I guess it would just have to be a subplot added into the whole Varvelt sub-arc. The thing is, it wouldn't even need to take much time at all, but to see both Nel and Grimmjow working together in some way to rescue Harribel would be amazing, while adding some closure for Hueco Mundo's queen. Though admittedly the novel makes it sound like it was mostly Nel who did all the rescuing anyway, while Grimmjow considers Harribel to be a burden. Anyway, Nel feels a strange sense of bewilderment at being in the Soul King's throne room. Despite the fact they were once his subordinates, the Espada have now found themselves reaching the Soul King before even Aizen. But with Nel carrying the injured Harribel, the two of them watch as Grimmjow squares up to the powerful Shinigami, distrustful of them and their intentions regarding their former Arrancar enemies. However, Nel blasts Grimmjow with a cautionary bala, reminding him that with the Quincy now bested, the Arrancar may default back to being the enemies of the Shinigami quickly should a fight break out between them. Nel even thinks to herself that should Grimmjow attempt to find and fight the injured Ichigo, she'll silence him with a surprise attack before dragging him back to Hueco Mundo herself if she has to. Interrupting the two of them, Harribel asks Ichibei if the shattered abomination, Yhwach's mangled corpse, behind them is what they call the Soul King, the foundation of the very Soul Society itself, which Ichibei confirms. When Ichibei wonders then whether or not Harribel can tolerate its existence, the former Espada merely muses that now she understands why Aizen would detest that figurehead to some degree. Standing tall on her own 2 feet, Harribel apologizes to the Shinigami for having inconvenienced them, promising to repay their debt. The Shinigami, on the other hand, merely say that if they want to repay their debt, all they need to do is keep things quiet over in their world. Once Ichibei ensures that they are free to leave without threat of attack, the Espada then prepare to head back to Hueco Mundo, a new dawn breaking over the hollow white sands. And so that's what happens to the Espada, Harribel and Nelliel in the immediate aftermath of the war. Honestly, Can't Fear Your Own World is full of interactions I'd have loved to have seen in the source material itself, and this one, involving these powerful Arrancar speaking with Ichibei and Kyoraku at the foot of the new Soul King, is absolutely up there as one of the top ones. But that isn't the last time we see these Espada in the light novel. Far from it, in fact. Harribel and Nelliel become major supporting players in the story, finding themselves involved in an enormous skirmish that contains a large variety of different characters from all over the Bleach universe. 6 months after the war, Harribel is now forced to reluctantly consolidate her power in order to quash the constant warring in Hueco Mundo, forcing many Arrancar, even some Vasto Lord Menos, to retreat to their colonies. Some attempted to fight her and even launch surprise attacks, hoping to bring down the current strongest Arrancar, but displaying her role as a true power of Hueco Mundo, along with Nelliel, Harribel eventually unites many surviving Arrancar that used to serve under Aizen. Together they strive to bring peace back to Hueco Mundo by taking out the remaining cells of Quincy soldiers, including several Sternritter who escaped the war alive, such as Lil Toto Lampard and Giselle Jewell. Harribel, ever the diplomat, tries to ask the Sternritter why they continue to devastate Hueco Mundo even after Yhwach is gone. However, their fighting is interrupted by the arrival of a strange being. A child called Hikone Ubuginyu, dressed in a red shihakusho and wielding a peculiar bone-white Zanpakuto. Harribel notes that Hikone's presence feels like the creature her Fraction are capable of creating, the Chimera Ion. Working together with the Sternritter and a rogue Grimjo, Harribel and Nelliel lead the fight against Hikone and force them back through a Garganta and away from Hueco Mundo once more. In the aftermath of the battle, Harribel regrets letting Hikone get away, musing that it took all of the Arrancar's combined strength to overpower their enemy. A little later, Rudborn, who survived Yami's attack back in the Arrancar arc somehow, informs Harribel and Nelliel that Grimjo has gone off on his own, and believes the Espada is either heading to the Soul Society or to the human world. Of course, this concerns the more level-headed Espada somewhat. Nel is worried that Grimjo has Ichigo in his sights, but Harribel isn't convinced, believing Grimjo follows his animal instincts and therefore wouldn't leave his own territory that he deems is his to protect, so easily. It's at this point that Nel remembers Ichigo and Grimjo's conversation from the 1000-Year Blood War arc regarding Grimjo's motives. Regardless, the two of them open a Garganta and make their way to the Soul Society to recover the wayward Espada. Before they leave, Harribel notes that she is going to negotiate with the Soul Society and discover their intentions, while Nel is going to recover Grimjo. As Harribel heads into the Garganta, she apologizes to her Fraction who are being left behind, but tells them she needs to go and learn the truth of the odd child in order to prevent another enemy like Yhwach from appearing. By the time Harribel and Nelliel arrive in the Soul Society, a huge battle is already underway. Quincy, Shinigami, Fullbringer, and even a resurgent Lupi are banding together to take on a gargantuan hollow that's being controlled by this Hikone figure. The enormous hollow, Ikomikidomoe, is an ancient being, one who roamed the lands when Baragon ruled Hueco Mundo. It notices the appearance of Harribel and Nelliel and asks if they are mistresses of Baragon, which is interesting because it makes me wonder if Baragon actually had mistresses back in the day. But of course, they're not. Insulted by Iko Kidomoe's antiquated assumption, Nelliel flatly tells Harribel that she thought Baragon was dead. Despite the two of them having no official affiliation, Baragon is a rare, powerful hollow who hails from the same period as Iko Kidomoe himself, and so the massive hollow lets out a despairing wail upon hearing this. As the battle continues, with Iko Kidomoe summoning an immense army of hollows to attack the combined forces, Nel demands an explanation from Grimmjow as to why he came to the Soul Society. As Hikone attempts to flee once again, they launch a Gran Rey Cero at their enemies, but Nel steps in quickly to swallow the energy beam with her Cero Doble ability alongside Lil Toto, who eats the oncoming attack using the Glutton. With the two enemies now exhausted in the wake of Hikone's blast, Lil Toto asks Nel if she wants to continue their battle from back in Hueco Mundo, but Nel, having seen how Lil Toto assisted her, merely says that as long as the Quincy now stay out of Hueco Mundo, they'll have no problem. This makes sense to me. The Quincy caused major hurt and damage in Hueco Mundo. Now, of course, they did the same in the Soul Society too, but it was a little different in Hueco Mundo. The Quincy saw the Arrancar as lesser beings, and so attempted to completely subjugate and control their victims. So it's highly magnanimous of Nel to let their conflict lie, and representative of someone who can eventually take charge. After a while, Nel and Harribel, along with the rest of the allied forces from all corners of the universe, gather at Kukaku Shiba's house for a meeting regarding their next move. When the room grows tense and a battle threatens to break out, Kukaku angrily unleashes her Reiatsu, stifling everyone briefly as she barks that they need to behave in her house, something that immediately earns her the respect of the two female Espada. During the meeting, Kyoraku comes forward in order to propose a temporary alliance between all of the parties present. Among the gathered forces, the Arrancar are naturally skeptical, with Harribel asking Kyoraku to swear upon the memory of Coyote Stark, with the head captain noting their mutual respect of the Primera Espada. As the final showdown begins within the Valley of Screams beneath the floating fake palace, Tokinada formally introduces everyone to Hikone as the next Soul King. Harribel is quietly disgusted by this revelation, asking Tokinada if he plans to sacrifice the child to the Soul Society. Once the battle begins and Hikone releases Iko Kidomoe once more, the Arrancar face down the massive hollow and release their own Zanpakuto, with both Harribel and Nelliel activating their Resurrection. Together with the Priverone Espada from Mayuri's corpse unit, they faced off against Iko Kidomoe. Dordoni is briefly shocked to discover that Nel was in fact the little child he tried to attack when fighting Ichigo. Meanwhile, Harribel conjures several typhoons of surging water, combining them with the earth kicked up from Dordoni's own strike, and sends them crashing towards Iko Kidomoe, ensnaring the giant within. With Iko Kidomoe captured, Nel then flings her Lanzador Verde into the creature's eye, causing it to shriek in agony. Later, as the fighters transition to facing Tokinada instead, Harribel attempts to send a stream of water towards the Shinigami, but he evaporates it with the flames of Ryujin Jaka. Considering Tokinada is a lot weaker than Yamamoto with considerably less rare Ryoku, this just feels like it is hammering home that Harribel had no chance when she tried to stand up to the head captain back in the fake Karakura town. Once the battle is done and the epilogue begins, we see that Harribel and Nelliel have returned to Hueco Mundo, along with many of the other Arrancar. Here they manage to save the soul of Aura Michibane, who we spoke about fairly recently in her own dedicated video, whose physical human body was killed by Iko Kidomoe after she stepped in to rescue Hikone from its jaws. Showing her compassion, Nel introduces herself to the now spiritual Aura, telling her that despite her being an enemy originally, she couldn't just leave her in the Garganta. As Nel introduces Aura to the rest of her family and gives her some food to enjoy with Pesce and Dondachaka, she invites Harribel to eat a meal with them as well, though notes that the de facto queen of Hueco Mundo is a little shy. After eating her meal with the rest of them, Harribel approaches Grimjo, who had ventured over to watch them all together from afar. Asking him to join them, Harribel extended Grimjo an invitation, but the former 6th Espada turns her down. And there you have it, that's everything that happened to the Espada, Harribel and Nelliel after the 1000-Year Blood War arc, including essentially the essence of their entire role in Can't Fear Your Own World, though I have trimmed it down somewhat into cliff notes for the sake of this video's length. The two female Espada have found themselves in a position of real leadership and power in the wake of these two huge wars, and now have a real chance to change Hueco Mundo for the better, while still keeping it true to those that need it and those that call it home. The future for the Hollows looks uncharacteristically bright, and it'll be interesting to see if, say, the Hell arc ever happens, what kind of a role they'll play. I hope, now that there is some civility here, that Hueco Mundo will be taken more seriously as a player on the world stage. Even the absolute pinnacle of Shinigami authority, Ichibei, showed them some form of respect, or at the very least he didn't kill them outright, even allowing Harribel some discussion on the nature of the Soul King. So I'm definitely hopeful. Regarding what we might see moving forwards, well, if these really are their so-called Hell Arc designs, then Harribel's blows me away. It is absolutely fantastic. It's an incredible improvement, as she now seems to be really leaning into her role as the chosen queen of Hueco Mundo, making her both look and feel regal and strong. The fur-lined cloak is an awesome touch, and I really love the inclusion of the deep blue lining as well. Her mask looks to have changed also, likely implying she's grown even more powerful. It's difficult to make out for sure, but it kind of looks like she now has two horns sticking out of the side of her head. Perhaps they are fins, as I don't know what significance horns would have for a shark-themed release, but like I said, we kind of need a better look at it really to know for sure. Nel's design I'm a little less keen on personally, and I do wonder how Kubo will make something that appears to be that revealing work on the page, but then Nel's original design was also quite revealing, and it feels like what this design is actually a callback to, so I guess we just need to wait and see. But that's it for the video, guys. As always, I really hope you enjoyed it. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. What do you think about Harribel and Nelliel's roles in the post-1000-Year Blood War arc world? Do you think their involvement in the 1000-Year Blood War arc will be changed at all thanks to the anime, and if so, how? And finally, have Harribel and Nelliel become stronger, and if so, by how much? I'd love to hear all of your thoughts down in the comments. And as always, I want to end the video by saying a massive thank you and giving a huge shout out to my supporters over on Patreon. I really do appreciate each and every one of you so very much. If you like what I do here on YouTube and you want to support me as well, you can do just that to get your name in the credits like this, and to get every video I release absolutely ad-free. Alright guys, but until next time, I'll catch you later, and I'll see you then.